So it's a great initiative in clinical practice.
I've found it really, really good tool. It's very useful.
I have to say it has gone really well.
Axia were there always behind us.
Being on the digital form now, you don't be looking at specific handwriting. Maybe sometimes you can't read the handwriting, so you're getting more of a clearer view in relation to their assessment because now it's in the type format. We're assessing their competencies on practice as well. In clinical practice, they're not just developing their clinical skills, they're also developing their digital literacy as well with the new tool and around working in relation to these digital tools as well. So it's a great initiative in clinical practice. Well, we go up and visit our students up in clinical practice as well, so I can view their document at any time now in the digital format. So I suppose I can have more of a planned, focused visit whenever I'm going up to see them. So I might be able to see if a student has been out with a clinical nurse specialist or an advanced nurse practitioner. And my visit when I go up is very much based around being focused in relation to how they got on with the clinical staff, how was their experience, and it's quite timely as well because I've viewed the document before I went up. I suppose the biggest fear was around the cultural change because although the document itself didn't change, there was changes around maybe working with IT and the digital tool in clinical practice, and there was a lot of stakeholders involved, ourselves, the clinical staff, our preceptors, our students. But actually, I suppose it added to the collaborative approach that we had to take to ensure to roll this out as well. So we made sure that there was extra training sessions provided for clinical staff. Students were quite supportive as well of their clinical staff and making sure that they could access the tool. So it's been quite good overall. The largest influences that I've had is possibly the education around educating clinical staff. We've integrated it into preceptorship training. If staff wanted more of a maybe one-to-one workshop in the clinical area, that was provided as well. So you're trying to empower the staff as well in relation to using the tool so that the fears are not around utilising the tool and the assessment so that they can just focus on the assessment, which is what you want in clinical practice.
For the students, I think it's very easy for them to access the e-portfolio in relation to their clinical placement and supporting them in their clinical placement. It's very clear in relation to what they need to achieve on their own clinical practice, and their competencies are outlined for them. So it supports them in their endeavours in clinical placement. As a year tutor, I've a responsibility to oversee the MyCAD in its totality for each year group that I am allocated. So in past, students had a paper format of their MyCAD when they went out to clinical placement. As a year tutor, the only time I would see that really would be when I was out in my linked lecturing role or when the students handed up their MyCAD at the end of the semester. And now, as a year tutor, I can oversee their MyCADs from, I suppose, here in the ATU Donegal. And I also can phone them up and speak to them on the phone in relation to their clinical placements and what level or what supports that they might need or inputs that they might need based on what I can see has been achieved at that point. Like any digital approach or any new innovations, there's always the fear of the unknown. So for me, I suppose initially was the safeguard of knowing that the paper format always worked. However, the minute the MyCAD was implemented and the minute that students started to use it, CPCs, preceptors, associate preceptors, it just flowed and naturally took over from the paper format. So my fears were completely alleviated once we got going with it, and it was actually very easy to do. With the MyCAD initially, whenever it's set up, obviously there was a couple of troubleshooting issues in relation to maybe the differences between long placements, short placements, and the unusual placements that we might have in relation to Erasmus or even the schools that we use in intellectual disability. But from my point of view, both Max and Chris from Axia were very supportive to us, and any issues that we did incur was easily resolved. So I wouldn't have said, I suppose, that there are any major changes that need to be done, but if there had to be any changes, Axia were there always behind us.
It was introduced to us over a year ago, and basically the digital version is the same setup as the MyCAD, the assessment competency booklet. It's very easy to follow, it's very easy to use once you get used to it, and getting it set up initially. After that, you will find that it's much easier to follow, and it's I've found it really, really good too. It's very useful, and I think the biggest thing for us as a team is accessible anywhere. I think the biggest fear was the acceptance of a digital version among the nurses and the staff in services, and because I think everybody thought it was far bigger and more difficult than what it actually is. So, but once we got past that, it went quite smoothly. Another issue we were concerned a bit about was Wi-Fi access, and because a lot of services would have issues with Wi-Fi, but we've actually managed to encounter that, so it's all going quite well. We've been very much involved as a group. We found that the development team, Axia, they've really listened to our suggestions. They've taken everything we wanted changes on, they've taken them into consideration, and they've worked very closely with us to develop this really, really good tool. I suppose the other input we have as well is we've made suggestions of us having to be able to have a reopen tool on it. If students, as they do, they'll make mistakes on it sometimes, so we can go into it and we can reopen it, and so the students can make the amendments. And also for training, for preceptorship training for the nurses, this has also been introduced now as part of preceptorship training. There's a tutorial that's available to them during training to teach them how to get it set up and how to use it. And also there was a safety tool developed as well, and because we wanted something where students would be able to double check before they submitted an entry. So there's like a double check tool on it to ensure that there isn't many errors made, so we don't have to go back in and reopen it regularly. We have the tools that we can actually go in and resolve many of the simple issues that would come up in relation to maybe an error made in attendance records, an error made in relation to any other area of the competency assessment. And if there's anything outside of that we have issues with, we would email the team in Axia, and they're very prompt. They'll always come back and they'll resolve it immediately. So there's no issues in relation to managing it as a whole. If we can't get out and see students as clinical placement coordinators every week, I can just log on, I can see where the student's at, I can do a call, we can talk about it over the phone. That's very valuable for us, so we can monitor the MyCAD very closely. It's also useful for the students in relation to if it's accessible to them, and there's remove the fear of misplacing the document and the details that would be on it. It's very safe and secure as well. It's tamper-proof because that was an issue and a concern that we did have, that if somebody could go in and make changes, but they can't because we manage those changes as clinical placement coordinators and allocations and the lecturers as well. So it's proved to be very good and very useful. Yeah, it's been a big success.
I think like everyone at the start there was some apprehension because change in a new system and how was it going to go, but the team provided training from the onset and got our opinions all the way through, and they reassured us that basically it was just going to be the paper system that we have online, and that is what it is. It's the same headings, it's the same wording, so you're not thrown by any of it. And really I found as well, like anything, it's when you play about with it, you really get to know it quite well. And that's what's great with the system. You do just play around and figure out what you find the easiest way to check something out. And so overall, I have to say it has gone really well. For my job, a huge part of it is to check attendance records. So it's every hour that they do, we check to make sure it's done. And they were on a paper format, and I had a love-hate relationship with the paper format. Because it's time consuming, but they were familiar. So I was afraid of how that was going to translate to being on a computer and on an online system. That was probably my biggest fear, but it worked out quite well, because if there was something that you didn't think was right, the team fixed it. And I think with the start we didn't know Axia, we were getting to know each other, our new working relationship, and and they reassured us we will fix things if you have a problem or you want to go over it. And a couple of weeks into using the system and you reaching out to the team, you realise that actually they are that quick and they do help you as soon as they can with these things. So really any fears that I did have, they were very quickly gone, with using the system within a few weeks. We've also had a lot of input when it comes to the attendance records. Just simple things like, again, we didn't realise we sort of needed until we started using it. It wasn't broke down week by week. So we got them to change that, and it was a really clear picture. We now have a weekly report, so the dates are there, and any other suggestions, there's some that are in the works. the team are, they try to figure out how can we make this happen for you to make it easier. If they can't do exactly what you want, they figure out another way to do it. And it's been great because we have all disciplines on board now, so there's more voices and more ideas, and everybody has their own way of saying this could be easier if we try it this way. Probably don't know if we're allowed to name drop, but I'll name drop Max because he's been absolutely fantastic. He did so much at the start. It was himself and Chris, and as soon as you have an issue, they are back to you, and we have the Axia support email. And now they log your request, you get a ticket number, so if you ever need to reference it you can say this is the ticket number for my request. But I think, to be honest, you've never waited more than 2 days, if even, to have something resolved. And they're very open as well. If we'll all sit and have a talk with it. And what they have done as well is actually they have met with us every few months. We've always had this sort of regroup to sit as all disciplines and just talk about what's working and what isn't working, and they make a note of everything, and they'll come back then with the suggestions and the changes they've made. So it's been brilliant in that way. The main advantage from my own point as an allocations officer is, as I have talked about, the paper record we would have had. We had no way to view those until they were submitted to us at the end of, say, they held 3 weeks worth of information. But now with this, we can check in any time that we want. So, and I know the CPCs use it in this way. So it's not a case of when these records would have landed on my desk, I might have found an error and that person was gone, they were in a new placement or they were finished. This way we've been able to keep track as the days go by, because it's there, and then we have that access which we didn't have before. So I think that's the biggest advantage that we find, is just the accessibility. Anytime you can access it and see the information in front of you.
I have found the site very user-friendly and extremely easy to use, and no problems finding what I need to find on the site. Very easy to navigate. Well, up until MyCAD came in, we were using the paper form of the attendance records that the students write down all the time that they've done in their placements. So we had all the paper forms, so we were used to that. And sometimes when something new is introduced, it can be a bit daunting at the start, but no, it's been very straightforward, I have to say. When MyCAD was first introduced, Chris and Max came over and sat down with myself and Sandra, and we went through the format on the paper form, and we adapted that to the digital form of MyCAD, so that we kept it exactly the same. And Chris and Max would have communicated with us all along for any changes that we felt that was needed to the digital form, and they carried out all our requests. Max is always at the end of the emails. Any problems are fixed very promptly and quickly, and there's a helpline that we can contact to Axia, and the students also have a helpline, and if they have any problems or any teething problems, Chris is always there, or Max is always there at the drop of a hat. It's good too for confidentiality, and there's not a lot of paperwork sitting about belonging to students, so it's been very successful.
I've actually found it really good. I think it's far better than the old version, really, where it was all, hard copy and paper. I think it's better overall. I mean, everything's in the one place. It's very easy to access, and it's easier too for the nurses as well, because especially in busy environments, like you can log on at home. It's just very, very, very accessible. When you're in your own discipline, so intellectual disability for me, we go on placements in the general setting. So say in the community hospital, they haven't that set up just because there's that many disciplines and everything. But you just get in contact with them and it's set up nearly within that day, or the next day. It's very good, yeah. So it's just, especially for the first time setting it up, it can be quite difficult, just a new system. But yeah, you can just play the video, nurses, students, everyone can watch that, and it's step by step through it.
Initially at first it's a wee bit nitpicky, but then once you get in and you get to use it properly, it is a great service. When you're contacting with the other nurses, it's a lot easier when you get them logged in and saved up, and you're not searching for people to get signatures off them. You just get them to log in and it's easier. Well, I mainly used the computer in the hospital setting and all to use it, but then say if I had to do like the start of my mid-interview or like the personal stuff that you do on the MyCAD, I did it at the home on my laptop. No, I haven't had to add anything. I just able to look it up on the internet and you just log in and it's there. So I had a placement in the hospital and it was completely fine, easy, and then I had a placement out with the PHN in the public, in the community setting, easy again. They had the Wi-Fi set up, it was fine. It was even easier out in the community because it was more one-on-one, so you actually got to speak to them about it and they were like really informative as well. So, and most of them were trained up on it when I went out, so I didn't have to teach anyone to do anything, and it was, I'd say probably just changing over from writing things down and then typing it out, and then like spelling, it's easier because the spell check comes up. So that was handy as well for me because I have sometimes a problem with spelling when I'm writing it out. But I wouldn't say there was that many challenges with it, maybe just a few things where like if you sign it off and you can't go back and get it, if you've made an error, you have to get it unsigned by like someone further up, so that was probably a difficulty for me. Yes, I actually had the wrong date on one of my attendance, so I had to go back and get that fixed, but no bother. They were still able to sign in, they were able to sign it off, and I got it done.
The site is very easy to use. I've used it on different devices. I've used it both on a mobile phone or a tablet and on a laptop, on a computer screen. So it's very easy to navigate. It's very user friendly. No apps are required. It's a website, so as long as we go through either Google or Safari, we can access, through to the website as you would any other website. So no apps are required. The only challenges maybe are the lack of available devices on sites, on clinical placement sites. They could be busy with different users and trying to. The computers could be limited, in one or two computers, so you might have to wait. But once you get onto it and get access to the computer, it's very easy to use. Probably the nurses' lack of awareness that it was now moved online. A lot of them weren't aware of it. We went out in January, on placement in January, so it was news to a lot of the placements that we were going out to that we were now online. Then there's the hesitancy of, how do we set up the account or yada yada yada. But once they're set up, once the accounts are set up, it's very user friendly and they're open to. It's the exact same document, it's just online. So yeah, they were the only challenges, is that maybe the lack of awareness, but nothing to do with the actual website itself. I definitely like the versatility or how user friendly this is. We don't have to worry about remembering or keeping a document safe. It's all there and there's a full record. We can look back and there's a full record of all our placements where we've been beforehand. So yeah, definitely this is the way forward. It's just to get everybody into the same way of thinking.
At first, I was a bit nervous about using it because we had been using the paper document last year, and then when we started bringing in the new document, there was a bit of hesitancy probably on our behalf that we were unaware of it. But once we set up the account and we actually started using the document, that it flowed easily. So whenever you transition from the paper to the online one, the exact same questions are there, the exact same things have to be filled in, but it's just in an online format. You've got accessibility to it anywhere. It's not a case of, where's my book? I have to find the document, I have to carry it with me, that you can log on from any phone, tablet, laptop, computer, and it's there. So it's easy, you don't have to think about carrying the book around. I actually use a lot of devices for it. So if I was in the hospital and I was with my preceptor, we'd be going through it and we're using the in-house PC that we would have there. At home, I would use my laptop for it, and then if you're signing off your attendance for your hours, I would just do it on my phone, and I would click over my hours because it's something that's, it's clicking attendance is literally clicking a button to say that you have, attended and you've completed them hours. So you can use anything, for it. You just log on. It's just a web page, so it's not an app that you have to download. So you can use it, with anything, any devices. Don't knock it till you try it. So it's a case of log on and have a look at it. It's the exact same document as the paper copy. It's just online. And once you start filling it in, it flows so much better than the paper document, and you don't have the worry of where's my document, I'm taking it here and there, because if you lose that paper document, it's a massive issue. But this is online, you can access it from any device. You can print a copy out if you're wanting a hard copy of it, for your own reflection. But it's there, it's accessible on every online device, so it's easy, user friendly.